My name is Jem Schofield, and I'm a producer and an educator. I have a website called the C47. I do a daily, 5 days a week video podcast on production. And I'm actually here in upstate New York with a bunch of friends of mine. We are doing a little shoot tomorrow where we're using two 5D Mark IIs. We're going to be using Sekonic meters, which I use all the time. I'm hoping that we really get to put the 758 Cine meter to the test. My DP Matt Porwall is going to be using it for a bunch of stuff. We're going to be shooting interiors, exteriors. Some stuff is going to be lit, some stuff is going to be using natural light. And in all those situations, that meter is going to make a big difference. So we're basically here on a country road in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of friends and a very close friend of mine, Skip Sudduth, who is a director and actor. And we are finally shooting this little short film that we've been talking about for a long time. I've got a very, very close friend of mine who's worked with me for years, Matt Porwall, DPing, and it's an HD DSLR shoot. So we've got 3 DSLR cameras shooting video. We are using the 758 Cine meter because what we're doing today is all over the place. We're doing interiors, exteriors, some stuff is being lit, other stuff is we're using natural light, we're using reflectors, and to try to use the in-camera metering on these cameras to get accurate, correct exposure is a nightmare. Okay, so here we are at the exterior of the trailer scene. We're dressing the set right now. We've got a bunch of lights up. One of the big questions that people ask me a lot is, why do I need to use a light meter? What is a light meter? And basically it's an instrument to measure light, but we use it as a tool to quickly and efficiently move around and actually get correct exposure. Creatively, when we're shooting video, especially with DSLR cameras, we don't have the same kind of latitude we have with some of the higher end camera systems. And we also don't want to use the internal meters because they're not really giving us an accurate picture of what it is that we may be shooting in the entire frame. We use light meters to basically say, okay, first of all, what kind of depth of field do we want? Generally, when you're shooting films and you have wide shots, you have a very deep depth of field or deep focus, which means that everything is in focus to establish an area. And then as you start to get closer and closer into the subject or that location, you start to get a shallower and shallower depth of field because you want to focus on that thing and have everything else go out of focus. That's your aperture. That's what your camera's aperture does. Whether your camera's lens is open really wide, shallow depth of field, or really small, deep depth of field, is a creative decision, usually the first creative decision that's going to be made. Now, an incident light meter, like this 308S, is basically taking a reading based on where a subject is. So we're walking up and we're taking a reading and we're getting something that's telling us what the correct exposure is. And then we're either happy with that or we have to make changes to the lighting so that we can get the aperture that we want. So when we talk about a serious meter like this, the Mama Sita, right here, then we've got this spot meter, and we can basically go in and we can actually take different readings on a set, and then we can evaluate that and we can figure out where basically our range is. And with these DSLR cameras, we don't have the same latitude that we might have with a higher end camera, so we have to be very, very careful. There's a lot of compression in the cameras. We're using, basically a limited color space, so it's really, really important in those situations that we know where we might blow out in our highlights and where we might have problems in our shadows, because it's not always about crushing the blacks. We might actually want to see things where things are dark, and so we can be a lot more accurate with a higher end meter like this. So this is our trailer scene, and I'm just checking out, we're almost done dressing this, and we've got a variety of lighting in here. We've got LEDs, we've got HMIs, we've got a big China ball in here, and I'm basically just checking everything out because the crew's coming up in a minute with talent, and we're going to shoot our next scene here. One of the things that people ask me is, what do I need for a camera to put together a proper system? And generally what I say to them is the first thing you want is a good tripod system. It's really important, especially for still photographers transitioning into video, to make sure that they get a good quality fluid head and a good tripod system in general. The second thing that I usually tell them that they need is they need something for critical focus, because using a little LCD screen on the back of these cameras isn't necessarily going to cut it. And then really the third thing they need is a light meter, because if you can't accurately in a situation like this, which is a situation we're in all the time, go in and at least use an incident light meter to go up to a subject and get a correct reading of what's going on based on the lighting that you have, so that you can make changes to get the aperture, to get the depth of field that you need. Then it's a game over. And using the in-camera metering is just really not the way to do it. We've got sometimes 3 cameras at a time running on this set, so we really need to be able to go over to a set and actually take readings in various places and make sure that we're getting correct exposure. All right, so it's just after 7:30 p.m. and we had a call at 5:30 a.m. One more shot, right, Matt?
Martini's up.
That's it. So long day, pretty remarkable. I mean, just sort of talk to me a little bit about, DSLR shooting. Obviously the crew made what we did today possible, but DSLR shooting, and talk about using the 758 Cine, because it's the first time, at least in this kind of environment, that we've used them. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just shooting with the DSLRs was the only way that we could make this happen, because, I mean, we had, at this point I don't even know, we had a lot of setups and a lot of coverage per setup. The ability to have 3 cameras running simultaneously and be able to get our coverage in one take was incredible.
Yeah, and we're dealing with that limited latitude on the DSLRs. So obviously when I'm doing sort of daily gearbox stuff, I'm using incident meter, but using that 758 Cine, you had the spot meter on there. So let's talk about that. Yeah,
it was great. I mean, being in thankfully a cloudy, overcast day today gave us some beautiful flat light, but we're also, whenever we see the sky, shooting a flat white sky that doesn't generally read very well. So of course we want to make sure that if there is any detail in that sky, we're able to get it, and also that we're not creating more of a contrasty situation than we need to by checking what our shadows are doing, and then just, of course, making sure that our midtones are in.
Yeah.
So having that spot meter to check that, and being outside, the spot meter is mandatory if you're going to be checking what your exposure is in the background, unless you're going to send someone 400 yards down the road to check and see what's going on down there.
You're stealing that.
I may.
It might happen.
This thing's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've used it before, but
yeah,
it's sort of, it's all the variation that we had today.
Well, and even our last setup here, we're doing this surveillance thing, and I'm, in the woods, with a 400 millimeter lens shooting, and I was tired, and I couldn't get up and run over and check what the reading was at the table where we're shooting.
Yeah.
So having that spot meter to punch in and just grab it,
awesome.
And it was dead on. I was like, let's just make sure that we're on. So I ran in, and it was dead on.
Yeah. Short film, 3 DSLRs, a couple of meters, and a great crew, and that's it.